right, welcome to the anxiety module. This one's quite important, I think, for many people. Whether you've experienced anxiety yourself, which I'm assuming you have at some point, or you definitely know someone who has, this is a very good one just to understand the ins and outs of the whole thing and even some practical exercises on how to reduce anxiety. So let's jump right in. Going to start off with a definition. Anxiety is when you feel nervous, worried, and tense. It's like your mind is racing and your body is on high alert. For anyone that's experienced this, they know exactly what I'm referring to here. It becomes kind of obvious when someone says, I have anxiety, I know what it feels like. It's like, okay, cool, like we're on the same page. It's an important thing to start with because a racing mind, I'm going to highlight that part. A racing mind can be really difficult to sit with, especially when you need to perform, achieve something, get something done. It can be really, really distracting. So I just wanted to point that one out to start with. The other thing I want to point out too is avoid versus approach. This is brain basic stuff, so it's going to be covered a little bit more in the brain fundamentals module. But essentially, if you imagine that our reactions to things as humans is split in two. We've got avoid that thing or approach that thing. Anxiety is going to be which one? Avoid, right? Most of the time, if we feel anxiety, especially about a situation, a performance, whatever that might be, our brain pretty much goes, let's avoid that. Let's run away. Let's do all the things that we can to get away from that. Ideally, by the end of this module, hopefully by the end of this course, you will have an understanding on what can I do to pull me away from avoid and have me fall more towards approach, even if I am a bit anxious. What do I want to do? I feel anxious. Let's dial that down. Let's turn the volume down on that. And we're going to shift towards more of an approach mindset, right? Put a pin in that. I'm going to come back to it. Okay, let's start off with a couple of different things. These are important for understanding how anxiety actually works and functions in humans. So, state anxiety, a temporary emotional state with fluctuating feelings of nervousness and tension. State anxiety is essentially the thing that you might feel, it's context dependent, right? So the examples I got here, pre-game nerves, or you're going on a first date. So if you've been on a first date, you know what that's like. It's a bit nerve-wracking. If you are someone who is competitive, you also understand what it might be to have pre-game, a big game, big competition coming up. Nerves are normal, right? Although temporary, state anxiety can negatively impact performance if not managed. I put this in for a reason. Although temporary, okay, goes away, it can negatively impact performance if not managed. I use the word managed on purpose because we don't control anxiety. We manage it, okay? You can influence, sure. Manage, yep. You can't control it. If it's there, it's there, okay? There's a couple of different ways that we can go about this. There's a whole bunch of people that are big on accepting. I'm anxious, I'm going to accept it. I can still perform even though I'm anxious. I'm going to reframe. I'm going to try to get rid of it. Like there's a bunch of different things. I'm going to unpack these in a little bit more detail. So hopefully you have your answer by the end of this module on what works for you. Trait anxiety. Behavioral tendency to perceive non-threatening situations as dangerous, resulting in higher than necessary anxiety. Bit wordy, but essentially it's your perception on threatening situations, okay? So, is there really a tiger in my room right now? Probably not, right? Is my brain reacting like there is? Absolutely. Great. What can I do about that? Okay. The thing with Trait anxiety is the example I just gave where there's a tiger in the room. That's probably more state anxiety as it's context dependent. It can change, right? Trait anxiety is, do I think there's always a tiger in the room, right? It's personality based. It's quite stable. Whether it's higher or lower, it doesn't really matter, right? So personality based, stable and predictable, shaped by genetics and environment. So you might have heard that argument, nature versus nurture. This is both, okay? As with the whole argument, it tends to be both most of the time. We can't quantify it. It's not like 60% genetics and 40% environment, right? Whatever, doesn't matter. It's both. But this is the one that's stable and predictable. So if I'm quite an anxious person, day to day, you can assume that I'm going to have some base level of anxiety as I go through, okay? And then if I'm put in a situation that is anxiety provoking, that would be the state anxiety, where it's like, oh, this actual situation itself is really anxiety provoking for me. Hopefully I've made that clear enough. Trait anxiety is more consistent over time, requiring longer term strategies for management. I've put this in because it's important. State anxiety you can manage at the time, temporarily, okay? It's short-lived. Trait anxiety is harder. If it's part of you, if it's fundamental to who you are as a being, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. Some people are more anxious than others for a whole range of reasons. The thing is, if you want to manage the trait anxiety, it does take a longer time, a little bit more practice, implementation of various different things, which strategies for management, right? Some of these things that we'll run through this course will be applicable to the trait anxiety. It's just on a longer term horizon, but most of them will be for that state anxiety, as I find that the athletes that want to sit down with me for years on end, happy to. We work on that trait anxiety, and it's similar stuff. It's just applied over the longer term. There's a bit of a compounding effect. The stuff that I'm going to teach you in this specific module is more for that state anxiety. So right now I'm really uncomfortable. What do I want to do to try to alter, shift, dial that down, okay? So for this one, I have actually included some references and some conceptual models. I thought it was important for this because it's talked about all the time. It's not necessarily taken out of context, but I just felt it was important to put this in. So one of these theories and models is facilitative and debilitative anxiety. This is from 95, right? So it's pretty old stuff. But athletes or individuals who feel in control and believe they can reach their goals are likely to see anxiety symptoms as useful. This is a whole thing about perception. This is not, I'm anxious, so I can't do this. I'm anxious, maybe I can do this, right? It depends on how you look at the thing. So anxiety can be reframed as a tool for peak performance. So we just went through the cognitive cycle module. Hopefully you didn't skip it. When we talk about a reframe, that's like a thought challenge, okay? So a circuit breaker from the module. If you watched it, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, go back and watch it before you continue this one. You can reframe whatever is happening, okay, depending on the context. So it's the roller coaster example, right? I'm on a roller coaster, it's really scary, or is it really exciting? It's both, okay? It depends on how I'm viewing the whole thing. It's a really important part of this, okay? This is the stuff that everyone wants. So listen up. Tips for reducing anxiety. Number one, and this is all based on evidence, okay? Number one is something called progressive muscle relaxation. For those of you who haven't heard about it, it's essentially tensing and releasing muscles all the way through your body, up and down, and it induces a relaxation feeling, okay? I'm going to run through the whole script in this module. This is more the educational, the frame of the whole thing. In the practicals tab, you will find a script, and I'll have an audio recording of that script as well, so you can just listen and follow along. But it's essentially going to be this full exercise, okay? But all you need to know is PMR, squeeze, release, okay? All the muscles through your body. Grounding. Using your five senses. Everyone has five senses. Okay, we're going to run through them. As you do this, it not only pulls your focus away from whatever is distracting you, causing you this anxiety, whatever it might be, it helps you to refocus. Okay, it's called grounding for a reason. It helps you to be present, and using your senses is one of the fastest ways to get there. Again, in the practicals tab, I'm going to have information on that. Breathing exercises. Now, before you tune out, because everyone does when I mention breathing, there are so many different ones that you can do. These three are probably the most effective that I've found, not just based on the research, but practically. So in my own practice, myself, with my athletes, with my business people, these three here are definitely the most effective. Again, all the actual instructions step by step are going to be in the practicals module, but I just want to cover these quickly. So number one, this is the gold standard, okay? Breathe in 4 seconds, hold it for 2, breathe out for 6. If you do this for 2 to 4 minutes, you're going to be zen, right? The reason I've got extra steps required here is because there are a couple of extra steps that it involves a bit of cognitive stuff as well, where you're counting and watching a clock and things like that. Step-by-step instructions will be in the practicals tab. Second one, nice and simple. Breathe in for 4, hold it for 7, breathe out for 8. This is really hard to do if you are super wound up, okay? If you're very, very wound up, you're very anxious, you're definitely not going to be able to hold your breath for 7 seconds and breathe out for 8. Okay, it's going to be really hard for you to do. So what I would recommend instead is start with number 3. Then we go back to number 2. Number 3 is something that it's called the physiological sigh, essentially, right? You breathe in all the way. Breathe in again. Little one on top there. And then all the way out. The analogy I have for this, to remind you of it, is if you've been in a plane, it's like a plane taking off, right? There's a nice long takeoff. You take off, they put the wheels up. For some reason, every time you reach that altitude there, just before it, there's like a little bump of turbulence. That's the second breath. And then imagine a landing, really nice, long, stretched out landing. Because the point of that exercise is that you breathe all the way nice and slow. When you get to the top, there's that little bump, and then there's a nice long landing at the end, okay? Again, all the instructions will be in the practicals library. Part of identifying what might be going on for you with any anxiety stuff is asking yourself some reflective questions. So, number 1, what does my anxiety actually look like for me? Do I feel it in my body, somatic, right? When I say somatic, I mean body. So the physical sensations, are my hands shaking and sweaty? Do I notice my heart rate pumping out of my chest? Maybe I get like a hot face. There's a bunch of different things that can come up. Thoughts, so the cognitive side. So is everything just racing through my head and I have no idea what, like I can't make sense of it. It's just noise, okay? Feelings, emotions. Do I notice, before I notice any of the other things, do I just notice that I'm anxious? I can feel it straight away. There'll be other things associated with it too, because everyone has different symptoms. One of the most common ones I hear of is butterflies in the stomach and the heart racing. They're the two. So these are the things that you want to be aware of, okay? Because then we ask, what do I think, feel, and do? So again, that cognitive cycle when I'm anxious. If you remember back to the emotional reasoning, when you're emotional, your decision-making is going to be skewed. So you can imagine when you're anxious, the choices that you make are going to be skewed, okay? You are likely to fall into that avoid space. You're going to want to avoid stuff. Totally normal, right? You're going to want to get away from whatever danger there is. That's what your brain does, right? It's like, get us away from this. So definitely worth considering as you start to reflect on some of these things. Do I notice more state or trait anxiety in my daily life? This one's super helpful because if I said, day to day, I am quite an anxious person. Okay, cool. We know that your trait anxiety is probably elevated. Right. That's okay. Everyone's different. We can manage that over time. If you don't tend to be a very anxious person, but there are certain situations, contexts where if you get into that, your anxiety goes through the roof, we also want to be aware of that because yes, we can manage it, but if the significance of that thing is going to be debilitating or make you, if you make decisions that are just way outside the norm for you, then that's something we want to understand, okay? Because once we understand that, we can then apply certain interventions that are going to help. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so in summary for this frame, and then remember all the stuff that you're going to need for those practicals is in that tab. Anxiety is a normal part of life. It's why we're all still alive, okay? Anxiety kept us alive. It's helpful, okay? Sometimes not so much, but it's normal. Learning to manage and use it can improve performance. Okay, so you can use it for good. It doesn't have to be a debilitating thing, right? I want you to practice the techniques that I've shared with you because they will help to reduce your anxiety and boost resilience. Because over time, if you are going into a game or you've got a presentation at work and you know that you've got 3 or 4 different really effective tools to use if you get anxious, you're going to be so much more confident going into that thing. The resilience part of it is you go in, you try. Does it work? Maybe. Hopefully. If it doesn't work, okay, try another one. There's a whole bunch of them. That's why I've given them to you. That's why they're there in the practicals tab. Practice these things so that you know that when you're in this space, you have tools to use. It helps build the confidence, which then builds resilience, so on and so forth. Okay? I hope all that made sense. Very happy to run through anxiety. We're going to move on to the next module now.